So I just read this book, Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. I first found out about Machiavelli, as most millennials did, from listening to Tupac. This was in high school when Tupac released Machiavelli album, not spelled the same way, but Tupac was a fan. And it turns out I downloaded this thing on my Kindle 15 years ago, but I wasn't ready for it. I mean, it is dense. So this book's only like 80, if you take out the notes, it's only like 85 pages. And I recommend the Penguin Classics translation. It's a much better translation than the one on my Kindle. So I've been noticing for a lot of these older books, translations really matter. And this is now like the third book that I went back to with a better translation and thought to myself, why didn't I enjoy this book the first time I read it? And it's because the translation makes or breaks it. So Machiavelli this was essentially in the 1500s, like 1513, I believe, was when this book was written, when Machiavelli was in exile. And it's not a philosophy book necessarily, but it may be one of the first self-help books. And Machiavelli, who was a Florentine diplomat, a political theorist, a civil servant, I did read about him in Walter Isaacson's biography on Leonardo da Vinci. Towards the middle of the book, Da Vinci goes to Florence and actually meets up with Machiavelli. And so then that planted the seed, like, yeah, I should probably, because Isaacson, the biographer of Leonardo da Vinci, also was like, kind of giving a mini biography of Machiavelli in that book, although it kind of planted the seeds for me, hey, I should go back to my Kindle and read it. And this was 15 years later. And I'm coming out with a Da Vinci book review soon. But when I went to the bookstore, I saw this. I picked it up for like $8, and I made sure before I bought it that the translation was different than my Kindle, and it is. So this was like one of the world's probably first self-help books because I've read, I mean, you can argue some of the Stoicism books are Epictetus, um, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, even though he meant that to be a diary for himself. But like this was really, I guess, one of the first self-help books for power, for gaining power. And it's really more like a manual. And this was kind of like a job application by Machiavelli because after he was ousted from political office and imprisoned, he wrote this to win the favor of the Medici family, who had taken power in Florence. And then what he gave them instead, I have no idea if the Medici family valued this treasure. But here I am 500 years later, reviewing it on YouTube and figuring out, especially the second half of this book, where he gets less into war and more into how to keep power and how to uh, surround yourself with people. And we're going to get into like what I thought were some of the five core principles. And I shouldn't say the first half of the book is about war, but it's about principalities and how you take over and what kind of government you should set up. And do you let the people keep arms or do you disarm them or, those kind of tactics. As an entrepreneur, the second half of the book was great because it's all about emotional intelligence, really. And so I'm going to go through the five core principles from this book, but the core thesis of this entire book, it's not about virtue or morality. It's about effectiveness. And he separates what we wish the world was like from what it actually is. For this book to be so brutally honest, in this age, even in 2025, you've got virtue signaling everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn a lot for my business because it's a good platform for that, but the virtue signaling in the news feed is incredible. And now with AI, it's even more incredible because the AI is just writing nonsense, like soulless stuff. And you would expect books like that, especially a job application, which this book essentially is, to be full of platitudes, but then I probably wouldn't have made it Penguin's classic. He tells it how it is. He doesn't say how he wishes the world was like. He gives you the reality of what it actually is about. And from the very outset, he talks about there are different kind of states, whether they're an inherited state, a conquered one, an ecclesiastical one. But most of the book focuses on new princes. And I guess today we don't have many princes, but it's essentially people who acquire power through skill or fortune and the brutal challenges they face. Sounds like an entrepreneur to me, and also sounds like a politician. And he doesn't tell you to be evil. He gets criticized a lot for being evil. It's actually even a adjective or an adjective these days. Like, oh, you're very Machiavellian in your strategy. He doesn't tell you to be evil. He tells you to be realistic. That's what I got from this book. And this book there's no virtue signaling. He could have released it today and changed princes with entrepreneur and changed the principality part with startup, and he would have made a bestseller today without really changing any of the thesis. And this is what I love about books like this, and especially this one. It's an instant classic, and I'm glad I came back to it on this translation. So, five core principles from the Prince, at least according to me. The most famous one, maybe, it is far better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Of course, you should be both, but love is conditional. People are selfish and they turn on you when it's convenient. Fear, when managed correctly, is reliable. But he warns, the prince must make himself feared in such a way that, if he is not loved, at least he escapes being hated. So at the end of the day, he says, well, both, obviously, if you can't, fear, but love is not bad either. Just don't be hated. And so this, for me as a business owner, one of my weaknesses, and I'm a recovering people pleaser, one of my biggest weaknesses is holding people accountable and being fair. I'm typically fair, but being firm as well. And don't be everyone's buddy, but be respected. So to me, that was a clear take home. Number two, and these are not really in any order, but number two principle from the book, inflict injuries all at once. Give benefits slowly. So the quote from the book is injuries should be inflicted all at once so that their ill savor, being less lasting, may offend less, and benefits should be conferred little by little. So, when you need to make tough decisions like layoffs, restructuring, removing toxic people from the workplace, do it cleanly and decisively and do it all at once. And then rebuild the trust from the remaining people by rewarding loyalty and results over time. So give benefits slowly and inflict injuries all at once. As an entrepreneur, again, I've learned this the hard way. And I'm somebody who wants to give back to my staff because I know they're going out. As long as I hire correctly, I know they're giving me their all. And when they don't, that's when I usually run into problems. And I've been getting better. And I think this is just going to help me even more so because I've already had days in my startup site, 4 years old now, where I did have to inflict injuries all at once. And whenever I have a tough meeting, I make it a team meeting, a tough meeting, like, hey, I haven't had to cut hours or anything, but I had to write people up. We had to do kappas. I make sure everyone's there and we do it quickly. And then when we do give benefits like raises or like it's a bad habit of mine to want to keep giving things quickly. And I think slowly over time, like Machiavelli recommends, it's unfortunately the best way. Again, it's not how he wishes things were. Like, I wish I can just give benefits all at once and everyone's going to continue to remain motivated forever, but that's just not how it works. So, number three core principle. A good prince avoids flatterers and surrounds himself with wise advisors. This is a lesson I learned the hard way. I am in a unique situation where I was thrown into being an entrepreneur, a boss at a very young age. I was 24 with my first company and my first employees. And I learned this the hard way. I just thought I was cool. Like people liked me. Everyone was telling me around me, oh, that's so funny. And I learned the hard way, like, it's actually not, I know I'm somewhat funny, but I'm not that funny all the time. And I know that I'm like a decent dude and I'm relatively intelligent, but I'm not like that crazy on on those scales. And I learned this the hard way. And those people that were excessively flattering me always wanted something. They always, if I look back, there was always an ulterior motive. And so this third core principle, a good prince avoids flatterers and surrounds himself with wise advisors. Now, I learned this the hard way without reading this, but this is good reinforcement. You can almost, if you're looking for it now, you can tell, like, this person, where are they flattering me so much? This is not normal. So the quote is, a prince who is not himself wise cannot be well advised. And this is for surrounding yourself with wise advisors, not just yes men, not just yes men. So even if you're not brilliant, you must be able to recognize good advice and reject bad counsel. Your team reflects your judgment. And Machiavelli offers a sharp classification of intelligence. I think this is really important. One kind understands things for himself. So he said there's three types of intelligence. One kind understands things for itself. Another appreciates what others can understand. And a third understands neither for itself nor through others. The first kind is excellent, the second one good, and the third kind useless. So always figure out when you're surrounding yourself with your inner circle and employees, if you're at a small company, they shouldn't be your inner circle, but sometimes they are. And this is where I've drawn boundaries now. We can't be buddy buddies. We can't be my inner circle all the time, at least in the sense of running my business. Now, fourth core principle, at least for me, and I thought this was amazing and spot on. This is something I learned from this book. Neutrality is a weakness. Pick a side. And a prince also wins prestige. So the quote is, a prince also wins prestige for either being a true friend or a true enemy. And the moral of this principle is fence sitters get crushed. If you wait to see who wins before taking a position, nobody trusts you. Loyalty in adversity builds long-term power. Now, for anyone who knows me well, I often get playfully the nickname Switzerland because I don't try to pick sides. Like in conflicts. I always try to see the other side, and that is my strength. I recognize that as my strength, but it's also my biggest weakness. And I'm pretty high up on that empathy scale. So I like it's natural for me to put myself in someone else's shoes and see their perspective. So it truly is hard for me to pick a side because I could make arguments. I could steel man both sides of any argument. And they also say, like, not to flatter myself, but I've always thought that was a good thing because any man who can hold two opposing viewpoints in their head is a sign of intelligence. So I always thought I was on the right track. And I guess I am when it comes to concepts and when it comes to things that we're not really sure about. Like politics is a good example. I prefer to remain independent because I see point of view from the right, I see point of view from the left, and when people like start arguing about that stuff, I don't like to get involved because I can steel man both sides of it. So to me, and often what I do is steel man the opposite side of whomever I'm talking with just for an intellectual exercise. But I guess what Machiavelli means here is when it comes to more direct conflict, like not just this abstract, like what do you think? But like direct conflict. Like let's say um, there's a research clinic nearby or a competitor nearby, and then another competitor comes in, and I have to pick a side. Like it's in my interest that there's no competitors in my town, right? But if one comes in, okay, and we've kind of built an alliance, it's cool. But then if another one wants to come in and they're stronger, who do I back? And Machiavelli says there's no right answer as long as you pick one. So either one that you choose, it doesn't matter. But being neutral is the wrong answer. And I thought that was very interesting perspective I haven't considered. If essentially what he's saying is if you remain neutral in these situations, they're both going to hate you. Whereas if you pick a side, you kind of have a 50-50 chance of being correct that you supported the one who wins. Or maybe you can manipulate who wins, which is really putting yourself in a position of power. And then whoever you ended up helping ends up being more your subservient. Again, I know it's Machiavellian. He's talking about how the world works. So for me, that's going to be a thing I'm going to start working on a little bit more in certain situations is not being so neutral all the time. And finally, for me, the fifth core principle, although there's a bunch, there's like 25 chapters here. Fortune controls half, but the other half is yours. And this is more of a stoicism thing. So his quote is, I believe that fortune is the arbiter of half the things we do, leaving the other half to be controlled by ourselves. So Machiavelli compares fortune to a violent river, unpredictable and destructive, but the wise leader builds embankments during calm weather, so when the storm comes, he's ready. And a quote regarding this from him is, it is better to be adventurous than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you wish to master her, you must beat and strike her. Now, clearly, some things have changed in the times with this analogy because I'm not advocating for beating and striking woman, but he's talking about the fact that Fortune is a woman and you kind of mold her into how you want that to be shaped, how you want the destiny to come out. And this is a controversial line, but his point is be bold, be prepared, and take action when others freeze. He also says, kind of related to this, he says one of the biggest reasons why people lose their power or their principalities is because they get complacent when times are good. And when idle times, and this is not a quote from the book, but it's something that I've kind of, I think my grandpa mentioned it once or something, but I've kind of adopted this quote and Nietzsche said, the devil is merely God resting on the seventh day. Like that's when the bad stuff happens. I think not having things to do is leads to evil. And he's talking about when times are good, there's a there's two benefits to being busy and to take action at all times. Number one is you're going to be prepared for when things go bad. But number two is you're making your people work and they're focused on the work instead of thinking about you and plotting about how they can get ahead and all this other stuff, which is kind of more on the evil side. And I've noticed that too, like idleness and even in my own workforce. When we're busy, things are cool. Everyone doesn't have time to gossip. No one has time to waste time and cut hours and go do their makeup or their nails when we're supposed to be working or take personal calls because we're busy. But when we're not busy, that's when that evil stuff starts to sneak in. So always keep your people busy. Only good things can happen from it. Bad things and eventually evil come from idleness. Final call to action for you. Obviously, I recommend getting this book, but this translation. And the end of this book, Machiavelli kind of drops the analysis of like his macro thesis. And according to the context of the time period he was in, Italy is waiting to see who can be the one to heal her wounds. He compares the moment to Moses leading the Israelites, or Cyrus liberating the Persians. He's calling on someone, probably the Medici family, because remember, this was essentially his job application, to unite Italy and free it from foreign powers and restore its greatness. The quote is, "The task will not be very difficult if you will call to mind the actions and lives of the men I have mentioned in this book." He ends not with cold realism, but with aspiration. I think parts of this book are ruthless, but that's what makes it unique. Even today, like I said, he could have replaced Prince with Entrepreneur and Principality with Startup Company, and it would be a bestseller today. Yes, sure, this book can be used for manipulation, but you're going to learn those things anyways yourself, right? But it can also help you make decisions with clarity. If you're a founder, balance idealism with action. I think action is everything. Still waters get stagnant. I I I hate idleness in my companies for obvious reasons and not so obvious reasons. And then managers resist the trap of wanting to be liked. So, the real message, lead with eyes open, prepare in peace, act decisively. If you want to be effective in the real world, the prince is a mirror. It doesn't tell you what's right, it tells you what works. And the prince doesn't teach you how to be good. It teaches you how to survive, how to lead, and if you're bold enough, how to build something that lasts. I recommend everyone get this book. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye bye.